even Article 5 is a promise. It's not a guarantee. So anyway, everyone's selling it in their own fashion. I do think Trump, as usual, is trying to put time pressure on the Ukrainians, who are basically being urged by the Europeans to slow it down. And then, of course, we have no idea how Russia would respond.
Turn first to thinking about Ukraine. There's a lot going on when it comes to the potential deal between Ukraine and Russia. President Trump says that deal to end Russia's war is closer than ever. Here he is in the Oval Office describing talks with President Zelensky and European countries.
Very long and very good talks. And again, I think things are going along pretty well. And I think we're closer now, and they will tell you that they're closer now. We had numerous conversations with President Putin of Russia, and I think we're closer now than we have been ever.
There's not a lot of detail, and there are still some pretty big areas that have yet to be agreed. Donald Trump also said that Russia and Ukraine could still change their minds.
So we're having tremendous support from European leaders. They want to get it ended also. And at this moment, Russia wants to get it ended. The problem is they'll want to get it ended, and then all of a sudden they won't. And Ukraine will want to get it ended, and all of a sudden they won't. So we have to get them on the same page. But I think that's working along. Very good talk.
So is everybody clear after that? I'm not sure any of us are any the wiser. Let's get an assessment from somebody who does know, the New York Times chief diplomatic correspondent in Europe, Steven Erlanger. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you give us an update on where things stand after those talks last night? Because it seems to us that there has been some movement on the Ukrainian side in terms of the NATO demands and potentially some guarantees from the US. But there seems still to be quite large areas that are unresolved.
I think there are big areas that are unresolved, and a lot of detail that hasn't been filled in and won't be for some time. The White House people were briefing or spinning last night that it's 90% done. I think that's a major exaggeration. What there is more confidence in Ukraine that the Americans are sincere when they say they want to provide a security guarantee. The problem, as the Europeans say, is it's a security guarantee that is not very detailed and may change depending on the nature of Russian incursions. The Ukrainian worry, of course, is that Russia may take this ceasefire and deal, won't pull out of the Donbass, and will come back again through little green men and cyber attacks and then try to take over more territory anyway. And that the security guarantees will, much like Article 5, when we see Russian cyber attacks all over Europe, won't be triggered. So there's a lot to be filled out. And then on the territory thing, there's no agreement at all. I mean, Zelensky still says, I'm not going to give up territory Russia hasn't conquered. The Americans are trying to come up with some sort of compromise that calls it a demilitarized zone or a free enterprise zone. But this is, for the Ukrainians, not yet acceptable. So there's a way to go, but I think the primary issue for the Ukrainians is the security guarantees, because that is the only way they would even consider a territorial compromise.
And that security guarantee question I'm really interested by, because the reporting today suggests the Americans are calling this a platinum security guarantee, but they are also suggesting to Ukraine that it's a time-limited offer. And there does seem to be some move to try and push Ukraine into an agreement on the territory by way of using this security promise, this platinum security guarantee, as a bit of a sort of a stick, a carrot and a stick, if you like.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. And I don't know what a platinum security guarantee is anyway. Even Article 5 is a promise. It's not a guarantee. So, anyway, everyone's selling it in their own fashion. I do think Trump, as usual, is trying to put time pressure on the Ukrainians, who are basically being urged by the Europeans to slow it down. And then, of course, we have no idea how Russia would respond. We have this bizarre thing where the Europeans and Ukrainians are negotiating with supposedly their allies, the Americans, who seem to think they're mediating somehow between the Ukrainians and the Russians, when so far all the Russians are saying is, no, 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 we want all the Donbass and we want this and we want that and European security guarantees are unacceptable and we don't want NATO country troops on the ground in Ukraine, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, as Trump says, it goes back and forth. There is a lot left to be done. I don't, you know, you may even have some sort of agreement on principles, but filling it all out and making it real, I think, is going to be a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I think the fact that we still don't know what Russia is thinking, I think is the most important point in all of this so far. Just finally, Stephen, how hopeful are you? I mean, do you think any of this is changing the direction of travel, or do you think we're going to be here in a couple of months' time having the same conversation?
Well, I think, you know, it is a journey, if we put it that way, and the direction of travel is the right one. The talks are real. There is a much more realistic understanding on the part of both Ukraine and Europe that some kind of territorial deal has to be done, that Ukraine's unlikely to get back the territory Russia has already conquered. The question is, should it give up yet more territory that is unconquered as the price for what they hope would be a permanent peace with a platinum security guarantee? That's really the deal. So am I optimistic? Well, I'm getting there, but I don't trust Russian intentions here. And I think Russian position is very, very much so far rigid.
The threat of Russia there. Donald Trump has been parping away like normal. He says that a deal to end Russia's war in Ukraine is closer than ever. President Zelensky says he's really close to having the strong security guarantees his country needs. So are we really getting closer to peace here, or is it a chimera as ever? Natalie Tocci is an expert on European diplomacy and a director of the Istituto Affari Internazionale. She joins us now. Natalie, good morning to you.
My pleasure to be with you.
Are we closer to peace? It feels like a mirage that's always almost within grasp and then sort of drifts off further into the future.
Well, frankly speaking, no, I actually don't think that we're closer to peace. I think that what essentially is going on is a repeat of what we have seen several times, actually, over the course of this year. The Oval Office, the disastrous Oval Office between President Zelensky and President Trump, followed by attempts made by both Ukrainians and Europeans to sort of roll Trump back. We saw it again after the red carpet in Alaska, again, then followed by European leaders and Ukraine, coming to Washington in order to try and pull Trump back. And now we've seen it another time, the 28-point plan. So I think that what has happened yesterday, or rather what has been happening over the last few days, has to be rather understood as a negotiation, not so much between Ukraine and Russia mediated by the United States, but rather a negotiation between Europeans/Ukraine and the United States. It is fairly clear that Russia has absolutely no intention of stopping this war. It has made this very clear, including over the last few days. What we are trying to achieve as Europeans in support of Ukraine is that whereas the United States is and doesn't seem to be willing to exert any pressure on Moscow, at the very least it steps to one side rather than having to work against the United States.
Yeah. Well, I don't understand, and maybe there is no means of understanding this, that Zelensky wants security guarantees. The West has let him down with security guarantees in the past, it must be said. And so is there a world in which an Article 5 style security guarantee that is somehow underwritten by the US can prosper? Because it's effectively that just sounds like we're not willing to let him into NATO, and therefore we'll give him something that sounds a bit like NATO but can't possibly work like NATO.
Right. No, I mean, exactly. To be honest, I don't think there's a lot behind this. I think that there is more behind the idea of a European reassurance force deployed to Ukraine after a ceasefire, because ultimately the minute in which Europeans have literally skin in the game, then whatever guarantees they will sign on paper, including fluffy NATO-like Article 5 guarantees without NATO, then they actually start meaning something. Yeah. Without those troops on the ground, then frankly speaking, it's not worth the paper that it's written on. And everyone knows this. But I think there's an added layer to all of this, which is all this assumes that there will be a ceasefire, which, again, I actually don't think is in the making anytime soon.
But is there also the question that if there is a European force and it gets fired upon by Russia, that's NATO members themselves being fired upon, and then we are in an Article 5 situation, and then we're an inch closer to an open conflict.
Well, absolutely right, which is why these ideas of an Article 5-like guarantee without Ukraine's NATO membership only mean something if indeed there are European troops on the ground. So yes, you're absolutely right. That risk would be there, but the whole point of deterrence is that risk would be so great, or rather that threat would be so great that it would actually not come about.
And whether Putin would actually look us all in the eyes and believe that Europe would, in the final consideration, take that step in support of Ukraine, he might not think that, so it might not act as a deterrent.
Yeah, but exactly. So if it doesn't act as a deterrent, the point is that we are in a scenario in which war will spill beyond Ukraine's border, right? I mean, there is no, scenario out there in which somehow there is something akin to a Ukrainian capitulation, and we can all just kind of turn the other side, and that somehow the situation stabilizes in Europe. We are already in that situation of war. In many respects, actually, Ukraine has been acting as the front door, preventing that war to spill beyond Ukraine's borders. And therefore, if there is a sustainable security situation like in Europe, it is only if Europeans, together with Ukraine, actually, again, sort of have skin in the game and are actually willing and communicate to Russia that they're willing to do something about this.
Yeah, and we're still, where this all settles still seems very much up in the air. Natalie, really interesting stuff from you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Lovely talking to you.